Nia stood alone near the edge of the cemetery, her head slightly bowed. The sunlight spilled gently through the leaves of the tall trees, casting quiet shadows across the grass. Her black dress moved slightly with the breeze, and her dark charcoal cardigan hung loosely around her shoulders. She didn't cry. Her face was still, like someone who had run out of tears a long time ago. Behind her, people whispered, but she didn't turn around. She stared at the simple gray headstone in front of her. It read, James A. Robinson, beloved husband and father. To the world, he was a father to 4 children. But only one of them was standing alone, away from the rest. 2 men in black suits stood at a distance. Both were tall, with golden hair and stern faces. They didn't come closer. They didn't speak. They just watched. They were her adoptive brothers, Liam and Sam. Their expressions were hard to read, but they didn't look sad. They looked bothered, like her presence made them uncomfortable even here. Nia tightened her grip around the letter in her hand. It was sealed in a plain white envelope, her name written neatly in black ink. She hadn't opened it yet. The lawyer said her father had written it just days before he passed. He made sure it was to be given only to her, and only at the funeral. The lawyer had been kind, offering a quiet nod before stepping away. Nia was grateful for that small gesture. In this moment, kindness was rare. As more people gathered around the grave, offering hugs and small words of comfort to her siblings, no one came to Nia. Not even her adoptive mother, who stood close to Rachel, the oldest sibling, quietly dabbing her eyes with a tissue. They acted like Nia wasn't even there. Nia was used to it. Ever since she was brought into the family at age 9, she had felt like a shadow in a house full of light. She remembered the day they adopted her, the way the cameras flashed, and everyone smiled. But after the pictures were taken, the smiles faded. The silence grew. She became a part of the house, but never part of the family. Now, years later, at the funeral of the one person who ever truly saw her, that feeling returned stronger than ever. She looked down at the letter again. Her fingers trembled slightly as she brushed the edge. She wasn't sure what was inside, but something told her it would change everything. Nia took a slow breath and glanced once more at the grave. Then she turned, walking away from the mourners, away from the cold glances, toward a quiet bench under the trees. She needed space. She needed to read the words her father had saved just for her. And maybe, just maybe, she would finally understand why she had always felt so different, and why he had loved her anyway. Nia sat on the wooden bench under the tall tree, her fingers carefully opening the envelope. The paper inside was smooth and neatly folded, with her name written again at the top. The handwriting was familiar. It was her father's, steady, thoughtful, just like him. Dear Nia, the letter began, if you're reading this, then I'm no longer with you, but I want you to know something very important. You were never just our adopted daughter. You were my daughter, fully and truly, in every way that matters. Nia felt her throat tighten. The sounds of quiet conversations and footsteps on grass faded behind her. She could no longer hear the soft sobs from the group of mourners. All she could hear was her father's voice in her mind, speaking through the letter. I saw how hard it was for you. The letter continued, living in a house where you were often left out. I saw the way your siblings treated you, the way they looked through you. I tried, Nia. I tried to change it, but I didn't do enough. Nia closed her eyes for a moment. Memories rushed in. Dinners where no one spoke to her, birthdays where her gifts felt like an afterthought, school events where she stood alone while the others laughed together. She had learned not to ask for too much. She had learned how to be quiet. You were never the problem, the letter said. You are kind, brave, and patient beyond words. You helped your mother in the kitchen. You studied hard. You never gave up, even when no one clapped for you. And I saw it all, Nia, every moment. I was proud of you. Nia opened her eyes again, blinking quickly. A few people looked over, wondering what she was doing alone with the letter. But no one came closer. "I want you to remember this," the letter went on. "You belong. Not just because we brought you into our home, but because you brought something to our lives that we didn't have before. Heart. When I got sick, you were the one who sat with me the longest. You asked how I felt, even when no one else did. I noticed." Nia looked out at the trees. Sunlight flickered through the branches. A small bird landed nearby and then flew off again. Everything felt quiet, like the world had paused just for her to read these words. "There's more to tell you," the letter said, "but I wanted to start here, with the truth. You were never invisible to me. You were never unwanted. I chose you every single day." Nia placed the letter gently on her lap. Her hands were still, but her heart felt full of stormy emotions. Sadness, warmth, relief. For so long, she had wondered if anyone had truly cared. And now, even though he was gone, her father had answered. She looked back toward the crowd one last time, then turned away. She didn't need their approval. She had the truth now, and it was finally enough. Nia held the letter tightly in her hands as the words echoed in her mind. She couldn't shake off the feeling that the world had changed in that moment. Her father's words had given her a sense of clarity, but also something deeper, a quiet strength that she hadn't known she possessed. She folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her bag, looking out at the cemetery once more. The mourners had started to disperse, some walking toward the parking lot, others standing in small groups, talking in hushed tones. Rachel, Liam, and Sam were still together, standing near the grave, their backs turned to her. It was like they didn't even see her. They never really had. Nia stood up, brushing the grass from her dress. The breeze was picking up now, rustling the leaves overhead. She wanted to walk away from it all. The family who never truly accepted her, the funeral that felt more like a formality than a celebration of her father's life. She wanted to leave, but something held her in place. Her father had given her the truth, but what did it mean now? What was she supposed to do with it? She wasn't sure, but she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't pretend anymore. She couldn't go back to being the quiet, invisible daughter who waited for others to see her. "You belong," her father had written. "You are enough." Those words were like a lifeline. For the first time in her life, Nia felt like she had the right to stand up for herself. She wasn't going to hide in the shadows anymore. She wasn't going to let them keep treating her like she didn't matter. With a deep breath, Nia began to walk toward the group of mourners. As she got closer, Rachel looked up and caught her eye. Her expression didn't change. There was no apology, no recognition. It was as if Nia was still invisible to her. "I'm going to take some time to figure things out," Nia said, her voice steady but firm. "I need space. I need to think." Rachel didn't respond. Neither did Liam or Sam. They just stared at her, like they were waiting for her to disappear again. But Nia wasn't going anywhere. She had her father's words in her heart now, and that was enough to give her the courage to face whatever came next. She walked past them without another word, heading toward the entrance of the cemetery. Her steps were slow but purposeful. For the first time in years, she didn't feel lost. She felt like she was finally walking her own path, a path that didn't depend on the approval of people who never saw her for who she really was. As she passed through the gates, she looked up at the sky. The sun was still high, shining brightly through the branches of the trees. Nia knew there would be more challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. She had her father's love and his final gift, the truth that had always been hers. And with that, Nia knew she could face whatever came next. Nia walked slowly through the cemetery gates, the weight of her father's letter still heavy in her bag. The quiet of the place surrounded her, but it didn't feel the same anymore. The air was clear, but there was a new sense of clarity inside her that she hadn't expected. It was as if the truth had opened her eyes to a world she hadn't fully seen before, a world where she could be more than just an invisible daughter. As she walked along the path, her thoughts kept drifting back to the letter. "You belong. You are enough." Those words played over and over in her mind. They weren't just words on paper. They were a promise her father had made to her, even if he hadn't been able to show it the way she needed. He had chosen her, and for the first time, she understood what that meant. Nia didn't know where she was going, but it didn't matter. She needed to be away from the people who had never understood her. She needed to find space for herself, to figure out what this all meant now. The feeling of being excluded had been part of her life for so long that it felt strange not to be haunted by it. But today it was different. She felt free. She reached a small park just outside the cemetery, a quiet place where families sometimes came to have picnics or walk their dogs. It was peaceful, with soft green grass and a few benches scattered beneath the trees. Nia took a seat on one of the benches, staring out at the open space in front of her. She pulled the letter from her bag again and unfolded it, rereading her father's words. The breeze rustled the leaves above her as she sat in silence. It was as if the world had paused just for her to reflect. She had spent so many years thinking she was the problem, thinking that she wasn't enough. But now she saw things differently. The truth was, she had always been enough. It wasn't her fault that the others couldn't see it. For so long, Nia had felt like an outsider in her own home. The laughter, the shared memories, the inside jokes, they were all things she had been left out of. Her siblings had treated her like a stranger, and her mother had never really stood up for her. Nia had always been the one who tried the hardest, but it never felt like enough. But her father's letter had changed everything. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting a soft glow over the park, Nia felt a sense of calm wash over her. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she had a choice in it. She could choose how to move forward. She could choose to be herself, to stand up for what she deserved. She could choose to no longer be invisible. Nia stood up from the bench, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She knew that tomorrow would come with its own challenges. The people who had ignored her for so long wouldn't change overnight. But now, she had something they could never take away: the truth. And that, she realized, was all she needed to start moving forward. Nia spent the next few days trying to process everything. The letter her father had left her weighed heavily on her heart, but it also gave her a sense of purpose. For so long, she had felt small, like she was invisible to everyone around her. But now, with her father's words in her hands, she could finally see herself as more than just the quiet girl who never fit in. She decided to take some time away from the family. Rachel, Liam, and Sam hadn't reached out to her. Their silence was just as loud as it had always been. She didn't expect them to suddenly change, but something inside her had shifted. She didn't need their approval. She didn't need to keep trying to earn a place where she was never truly welcomed. After leaving the park that afternoon, Nia found herself walking down a familiar street in the small town. She had walked this street countless times before, but today it felt different. Everything seemed more vivid, as if she was seeing it for the first time. The houses, the shops, even the people walking by, they all seemed a little brighter, a little more full of life. Nia stopped in front of a small coffee shop, a place she often passed, but had never stepped into. The sign on the door read "Open." She hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door open and stepped inside. The smell of fresh coffee and pastries filled the air. There were only a few people seated at the tables, quietly talking or reading books. It felt like a peaceful space, one where she could just be herself. She walked up to the counter and ordered a coffee, then sat down by the window, looking out at the street. As she sipped her drink, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. For the first time, in a long time, she wasn't worrying about what others thought of her. She wasn't thinking about the family who never truly saw her. She was just here, in the moment, with her thoughts and her own company. As she sat there, a realization began to take hold. It wasn't about changing her family or making them understand. It was about changing how she saw herself. She didn't need their validation. She had her own. She had her father's love, his belief in her, and that was more than enough. She could make her own path now, without waiting for anyone to give her permission. The sound of the door opening brought Nia out of her thoughts. A couple walked in, laughing together, and she couldn't help but notice the way they seemed so comfortable with each other. It made her smile. For so long, she had longed for a connection like that. But now, she realized that the connection she had been searching for wasn't something others could give her. It was something she needed to find within herself. Nia finished her coffee, feeling a little lighter, a little more at peace. As she walked back outside, the world around her felt a little less heavy. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer going to hide. She was going to live for herself. The truth her father had given her wasn't just words on a page. It was a new beginning, and Nia was ready to embrace it. The days that followed felt like a quiet shift in Nia's life. She spent more time outside, walking through the town and sitting in the small park near her house. It was peaceful there, a place where she could think without the noise of expectations or judgment. She had always kept to herself, but now something inside her had changed. She didn't feel like she had to hide her thoughts or silence her feelings. For the first time in years, she felt like she had a voice, even if it was just for herself. One afternoon, Nia found herself sitting at a cafe, sipping her coffee and reading a book. The sunlight filtered through the window, casting soft shadows on the table. It was quiet, the kind of peaceful quiet that let her think without being overwhelmed. But just as she was beginning to feel at ease, her phone buzzed in her bag. She hesitated for a moment, then pulled it out. It was a message from Rachel. "Nia, can we talk? It's important." Nia stared at the screen for a moment, unsure of how to respond. She hadn't heard from Rachel since the funeral. There had been no calls, no messages, just silence. And now, out of nowhere, this. Her first instinct was to ignore it, to keep walking away from the family that had never really seen her. But something inside her stopped her. Maybe this was the chance to finally speak her truth, to let them know how she had felt all these years. After a moment of hesitation, she typed back, "I'm open to talking." The message was simple, but it felt like a step forward. Nia didn't know what the conversation would bring, but she knew she wasn't the same person who had walked into the cafe that afternoon. She had already found a new sense of self, a sense of peace and purpose that no one could take away. It wasn't about what Rachel or anyone else thought. It was about what she thought of herself. The reply came quickly. "Okay, let's meet tomorrow afternoon. I'll be at the house. Please come." Nia's heart raced slightly. Part of her wanted to back out, to stay in the safe space she had built for herself. But another part of her, the part that had been waiting for so long, knew this was a chance to have a real conversation. So with a deep breath, she agreed. "I'll be there." The next day, she made her way to the house. It looked the same as always, with its white walls and green front door. The familiar scent of grass and earth greeted her as she walked up the steps. Her heart was beating fast, but she reminded herself that she wasn't the same person who had left. She had her father's letter, his truth, and that was enough to stand tall. Rachel was already waiting inside, standing by the door. When Nia walked in, she could see the tension in Rachel's posture, but there was something else, too, something almost like hope. "Nia," Rachel said softly, her voice hesitant. "I know I haven't been the best sister. I never really understood you, but I want to try now." Nia stood still for a moment, unsure of what to say. She had heard these words before, but now they felt different. She didn't need to forgive Rachel right away. She didn't even know if she wanted to. But for the first time, there was an opening, and that was enough. "Let's talk," Nia said, her voice steady. She didn't have all the answers, but she was ready to listen. The living room was quiet as Nia stepped inside. Rachel was standing near the window, her arms crossed, her face tense. The house felt different now, emptier somehow, as if the years of unspoken words had filled it up with silence. Nia wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew this conversation would be important. for both of them. She took a deep breath before sitting down on the couch, glancing around at the familiar but now distant surroundings. Nothing had changed in the house. The family photos still hung on the walls, the same ones that had been there since she was young, but they felt different to her now. They were reminders of a time when she had tried so hard to belong, a time when she had been invisible. Rachel took a few steps closer, then sat down across from Nia, her eyes searching her face. The tension in the room was thick, but Nia could see that Rachel was trying. She was trying in her own way, and that was something Nia hadn't expected. "Nia," Rachel began, her voice quieter than usual. "I don't really know where to start, but I've been thinking a lot about everything. About you, about me, about all the times I should have been different." Nia stayed silent, watching her sister. She wasn't sure what Rachel was feeling or how much she understood, but the words she had just said made something inside Nia shift. Rachel wasn't angry or defensive. She was trying to reach her. "I know I've never really made you feel welcome," Rachel continued. "I know I've been part of the reason you felt alone in this house. And I'm sorry. I think I was afraid of you being different. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to handle you." Nia felt the weight of Rachel's words, and though they weren't easy to hear, they weren't something she had ever heard before. Rachel was acknowledging the past, something that no one had ever done. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. She wasn't sure if it was enough, but it felt like a beginning. "It's not just you," Nia said softly. "I don't blame you entirely. I've been alone in this family for a long time. And even when you didn't understand me, I didn't know how to make you see me." Rachel looked down for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I guess we both just kept our distance. We both kept pretending things were okay when they weren't." Nia felt a sharp pain in her chest, but it wasn't anger. It was the ache of years of being misunderstood, of trying so hard to be part of something that never quite saw her. But as she looked at her sister, she knew that for the first time, there was a chance for something different. "I've been thinking a lot, too," Nia said, her voice steady but calm. "And I don't need you to fix everything. I just need you to see me for who I am, not who you thought I should be." Rachel's eyes softened, and for the first time in their lives, it felt like they were both in the same place, even if it was just a small step forward. Rachel nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I see you, Nia. I really do." There was a long silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with the possibility of something new, something that neither of them had known was possible. As Nia sat there, she realized that this wasn't about forgiving the past. It wasn't about fixing everything in one conversation. It was about moving forward, one step at a time. And for the first time, she felt ready to take that step. The conversation with Rachel left Nia feeling lighter, but there was still a part of her that couldn't fully let go of the past. The truth had been spoken, but there was a long road ahead. Yet, for the first time in years, Nia felt like she was no longer walking it alone. Over the next few days, Nia took her time to reflect on everything that had happened. She spent more time in the park, walking along the paths where the leaves were beginning to change, the air turning cooler as autumn settled in. There was a new sense of calm within her, a calm that came from knowing that the truth had been shared, and that the weight of her father's letter was no longer a burden. It was a gift, one that had given her the courage to be herself, to stand up for what she deserved. Nia didn't reach out to Rachel immediately after their conversation. She needed time to process, to see if the change in their relationship could be real. She didn't want to rush into something, not when it felt like she had finally found a place of peace within herself. But she also knew that she couldn't stay in the shadows forever. The truth her father had given her had shown her that she deserved more than the silence, more than the distance, and certainly more than the feeling of never truly belonging. Several weeks passed, and one afternoon Nia found herself standing outside the house again. The sky was a soft gray, clouds gathering in the distance, but the air felt fresh, promising. She had taken this step once before, but now it was different. It wasn't about running away or hiding. It was about moving forward, about being strong enough to face whatever came next, no matter how difficult it might be. She rang the doorbell, her heart beating in her chest, but not from fear, from anticipation. When the door opened, Rachel stood there, a hesitant but hopeful look on her face. "Nia," Rachel said quietly, "come in." Nia stepped inside, looking around at the familiar walls, the same house that had felt so distant before. It no longer held the same weight. It didn't feel like a place that had once kept her hidden. It felt like a space where she could choose to be seen. They sat together in the living room again, this time with a different energy between them. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful, as though the air had cleared. After a long moment, Rachel spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about everything we talked about," she said. "I know it's not enough just to say the words. I want to show you that I see you, that I'm really here." Nia nodded. The words didn't need to be perfect. What mattered was that they were finally saying them, really saying them. They were trying, both of them. "I know it's going to take time," Nia said, "but we can start. We can start now." The two sisters sat in quiet understanding, knowing that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, moments where the past would try to creep back in. But for the first time, Nia felt like she wasn't alone in it. She had the strength to face what was ahead, and she had the truth that her father had left her. A truth that reminded her, no matter what happened, she belonged. As Nia left the house later that day, she felt a sense of peace settle in her heart. She wasn't waiting for anyone to see her anymore. She had already found her place, in herself, and that was enough.